here with Tracee. We're manufacturing equipment to make any kind of confectionery product, not necessarily edibles, but non-infused product too, from chocolates, gummies, taffy, caramel, hard candy, and also non-edible products such as wax candles, soaps, and other lotions. Visit our website, www.tracee.com. Contact us anytime with any question. We are here to help you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a special edition of Cannabis Tech Talks. I'm Jessica Ferranti, Chief Revenue Officer of Innovative Properties Worldwide and Cannabis and Tech Today, and board member of STM Canna, a cannabis pre-roll equipment manufacturer. Today, I'm super excited to be hosting part 2 of our special Women's Tech Roundtable, where we'll be diving into another exciting discussion on women in cannabis, but today, we're going to be focusing on a special subject, which is women in cannabis tech in particular. Before we begin, I'd like to reintroduce our moderator, Deneka Scott, and our awesome roundtable participants. To start off, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Tracee McAfee. She is the CEO and co-founder of Cryo, a globally patented and award-winning cannabis drying and curing technology that has reduced the lengthy process to short as 11 hours, which has pretty much revolutionized the post-harvest processing game. Welcome back, Tracee.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. I missed you guys, so it's great to be back.
Same. Lovely to have you back.
Thank you.
We also have the wonderful Dawne Morris here with us again today. As a refresher, Dawne is the powerhouse CEO and co-founder of PROTEUS 420, an awesome ERP and point of sale system that has been changing the game for retailers since 2008. Welcome back, Dawne. Excited to have you.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm excited to see you guys. I feel like it's been 24 hours since we saw each other.
I know.
Time flies. And last but not least, wonderful warm welcome back to our moderator, Deneka Scott. Deneka has held CMO positions across the cannabis industry for several years. She has served as the principal consultant for the Vermont Cannabis Control Board, and today is the principal behind Plan B Virtual Services, which is a female-owned contract labor facilitator. Again, we are in wonderful hands with Deneka at the wheel. So I'm going to turn it back over to her to get us rocking and rolling today.
Well, ladies, I believe it has actually been 24 hours and 19 minutes since we all started this conversation yesterday. I'd like to say to any of you listening out there, yesterday's conversation that is available as part 1 of this Women's Tech Roundtable was one of the most amazing conversations that I have sat through with actually 3 powerhouse women. Jess, I forget you're right next to me on the Brady Bunch square. And it's worth your while. So if you're watching this as the first time seeing the Women's Roundtable, I would encourage you to listen to part 1 or watch us on part 1. We're probably far more entertaining that way. But we're so excited to have this discussion today. Yesterday, we talked a lot about women and the role of women, the need for more women, the opportunities for women, the challenges of women. And we're not going to not have that conversation today. But what we really want to do is dive a little further for everyone in here and everyone that's listening on what is being done in the tech side, because what we have are 3 incredible women with tech-driven products that they are bringing to the cannabis market space. We have media, we have a science aspect with Cryo, and then we have true tech and true backend systems, the ERP systems with Dawne. So we're going to kick this off with probably one of the hottest topics I've seen. And honestly, it's been in my career since day one, and that is compliance. I've always been in marketing-driven compliance areas because they were highly regulated. So I know that this is such an incredible topic to talk about. So Dawne, I want to kick it off with you. And And what I want to maybe have you dive into with us on is about how your ERP can really help someone manage, or help any cannabis organization manage what they have and how they can access those types of things quickly to pull potentially needed reports.
Yes.
Or respond to regulators. So that's all I'm going to say about it, because this is your area of expertise with delivering that technological piece. So I would love if you would just kick us off with talking about how technology in that aspect is helping cannabis stay compliant with all the changes in regulations.
Definitely. And something first and foremost, a lot of people hear the acronymical ERP all the time and they say, I don't even know what that means. What is an ERP? ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It's a solution. Basically, the ideology and the way to be a true ERP means that you have to start from a solution, in this case, cultivation, the minute you plant the seed in the ground. And you have to go all the way out to fully compliant accounting. But at this point, the problem is that it can't be a standalone accounting solution. The accounting solution has to be built within the ERP itself, and it has to move through all of the aspects of the business from beginning to end. So for us, we took the that ideology of the traditional ERP and we moved through that through cannabis. So cultivation to consumer, taking that chain of custody aspect from the minute the seed is planted and seeing if the seed becomes viable or not, and then when compliance and regulation become important. Once the plant hits a certain stage or growth stage, it then has to start being tracked, right? And that means you have to start getting into the regulation and the compliance part of it. And that's where we kind of really do our magical pieces of what we do in our system. I like to talk about the compliance and the regulatory parts in educational pieces, because a lot of people think that they are one and the same, and they are not. Compliance usually sits here and regulation sits here. And in most states currently right now, compliance and regulation don't really work together or talk to each other very well. Compliance will say they're the most important, regulations will say they're most important, and really they are run parallel with each other. They are equally as important. A lot of it is going to be state versus the state reporting side of it, right? So the state regs, what the state comes in and says, this is what we're going to put in as far as regulations, and you now have to adhere to it. And then the state reporting system is going to come in and say, we're going to be the compliance part of that. So our two major compliance reporting pieces are Metric and BioTrack. Those are the two that you'll hear the most about. Metric is a standalone, BioTrack is a full service as well in many of the states, but they always exist on their own as a state reporting and compliance system, and we integrate in with them as a third party. Okay. What does that mean for a customer? It just means that they don't have to log into all these different systems to do things. And that's really where the ERP portion of this comes in. It takes the compliance, it's built into the settings. The system is making sure that as the regulations and compliance changes, that the system is being updated, sometimes in some states every day. I mean, I have states like Mississippi where I'm updating regulations constantly, and then I have some other states that, I can go through a quarter or two without having to update some of the OG states, on the West Coast. And so when we get into those types of things, the consumer part of it, or our customers, they come into the play, and they really rely on that needle to move as it needs to move. They have to understand that as they're maneuvering through the system, from the minute they're putting their grow rooms in, whether they're putting recipes in for manufacturing, for production, or processing, tasks, customers, vendors, wholesale, retail, all of these different pieces and the components that lay around it, which is really the communicational parts of it, invoices, recurring payment solutions, all of these things are what makes an ERP an ERP. But the compliance and the regulational parts of it, they have to be brought in from the outside. So we really have to rely strongly on our states to be able to update their data consistently and quickly. And that's, again, where a Metric or a BioTrack come into play. So as long as they're doing their job, then the third parties like me can do our job, right? I always tell people, as a technology person, I have one job. I have one job to make sure that my customers are always up all the time so they can service their customers. And more importantly, is because if they can't report the sales or they can't report the update in the chain of custody, that is a compliance issue. They are out of compliance with the state if they don't report it in a timely manner.
I think one of the biggest pieces that's important that like really plays into like the overall success of any organization, especially like a retail operation that's using a really solid ERP system like PROTEUS 420, is the fact that we all know this industry is incredibly plagued, I should say, with turnover.
Yes.
And what a lot of these retailers and other, operators are in desperate need of is different tools for redundancy.
Yes.
So when you have, that kind of turnover coming in and out consistently within, your organization, which is a natural thing that happens commonly in our space,
Right.
To know that you can get back, bring in somebody new and have them just plug into a system that keeps them in that state of compliance and
Yes.
assures that there aren't any gaps in between. I don't know if people and a lot of, operators truly understand the importance of having, those kind of systems in place. So like huge kudos to you, Dawne, because I think like it's such an instrumental part that really is the glue that keeps a big part of the industry together.
Well, and a lot of it comes to the conversations we have with our customers. A lot of times I like to kind of say, you've got companies that organizationally, they work in a triangle, in the triangle space, right? Where the ownership or the investors sit at the top and the consumerization sits at the bottom, and somewhere in between is the employees and communication. We operate a little bit differently. We are actually an upside down triangle when you think about it. We balance on the point, and that point is that our customers are always at the top. Their compliance, their regulation. So everything that we're doing from the way that we approach our business protocol for our customers is learning and growing with them. The more successful they are, the more successful we become with them, right? So when we look at a manufacturing situation, when we talk about turnover, right, even in a grow facility, what are the things that are the most important? It's the taskation, right? The tasks that come into play. When you're a grower, I've walked into grows where the master grower goes in and he writes everything on a whiteboard, and if he accidentally erases it, where were we, what were we doing? So for us, we organizationally create the task like a whiteboard for our grows. They go in and every task, and it is dependent on the task before it. So you have to complete the task in order to move it to the next thing. So if it's a seed and it goes from the seedling stage to to like a cloning stage before it gets moved to a cloning room, we track all of that process. What were the pieces that are there? And then when we talk about integrational pieces, water, electricity, being able to put the pesting pieces in there where if there's pests and things and that has to be treated, we're able to flag a room for potential mold. I know a lot of growers hate that word. But any type of thing. So when we thought about it and when we worked with our growers, what were the things that they did on a day-to-day basis? We know our growers want to put their hands in the soil. They want to talk to the plant. They want to grow the plant. They want to be in the room, smelling it, looking at the follicles, looking at the gooey goodness, smelling it, and preventing problems. And it's the same when we move it to the manufacturing process. When we look at the manufacturing process, you're talking about not just production, but producing if that's even there, Some people are just producers. They just break down the plant and package it and do other things. Some people cook it down. Some people make gummies and, belts and all of those things. But there's a process. So those tasks, when somebody leaves, those tasks don't go away. They just get moved to the new person. So they get to go in and see and take over that process. So if somebody comes in, if I already batched out something in the manufacturing side and I batched it out and I already have the oils for it, and now I need to get it into the distillate. I now know that I'm at this particular process that I have to get through, and I can go into my task and I go, oh, this is the task that I have to have set today. But there's other things that a lot of people don't think about on top of it. It's the man hours to it, so it's tracking, we're looking at true cost of product. We're looking at not just the compliance and the regulatory side of it, but how much it truly costs to make a product, the componental pieces. People don't think about the packaging and, and the flour and the, and the man
drying
hour.
and the curing. I
And
mean, that's always
Exactly.
forgotten. Yeah.
Yes. And so when we think about what we do in our system, we're tracking tracking that on top. So there's all these pieces of minutia that at the end of the day, when the manager goes to look at this, goes, well, you know, in my trimming process, I had 15 trimmers. Of the 15, 14 of them were processing in out like a plant every 5 minutes, you know, like, or a stem every 5 minutes they were going through. And I have another person who was doing like 3 to 5 in a minute. Like, it just being able to look, what were they doing? What was the process they were doing that was getting them through faster? What was their end result? Did I get bigger buds on that one? Or were they spending too much time trimming off good stuff instead of the bad
You-
stuff? So
You know what the best part of this too is, it kind of ties into what we started off our conversation about yesterday, which is again the importance of tech in cannabis and the importance of data. And
yes.
it simply put, it doesn't matter if it's compliance focused data, if it's data showing again, you know, what your labor costs are or what your efficiency is of any given process. It's tremendously difficult to run any business without having data behind it to support your, you know, your next move, right? To support you know, different changes in the company, different, more efficient ways to move forward. So again, it just goes back to, I know we started on the compliance topic, but it just goes back to the importance of not just having data, but rich data and data that supports every end of the business, as opposed to just the things that tie into mandatory, you know, compliance and regulation.
And
You
in
know,
one platform. That's what
Exactly.
I think that is
Yes.
so incredible.
And
You
and
know,
that
I think
that's something that's important too, because when you think about it, when you get to the minutia of business, it's always about money. How much are we spending? How much are we making? That is really what we're
it
always
does.
trying to get
Well,
out of
It's
the
cost
business
per
part of it.
gram. That's all we hear now.
yes.
So
I
I want
got
to
to
take this.
focus on reducing our cost per gram. Cost per
Yes.
gram is like the new buzzword, right? And
Yes.
getting it lower. Everyone's recognizing that is the key element of survival right now. And
Correct.
they want to be more efficient in all aspects of the business. And I think that a tool like that Dawne has is incredible because it takes such a big chunk off their plate instead of quilt. I always see a lot of these systems like a quilt, because you have to piece it together and hope it all
Good point.
fits.
It's a really good.
And
It's a really good
and
point.
just like in marketing, that's why I try to use an agency that does it all, because
Mhm.
everybody has different voices and opinions at different agencies. And trying to put that together and hope that the messaging works on your social as well as your website, as well as your public imaging, pulling it together, it looks like a quilt. So that's why I like having things that integrate and, you know, a lot to reduce that so people can focus on other areas of being efficient, because there's always areas in every operation I've been to of places they could improve and be efficient.
So-
And if they can spend that time somewhere else where Dawn's freed them up having one platform, I think that's awesome.
So
Well, it
just to
helps.
kind of round out the compliance aspect, and because I'd like to pull back there for just a second, and then I want your point, Dawn. Having been in an industry where you can get shut down if
Oh,
you are
yeah.
not compliant,
Mhm.
I only see the regulated markets becoming more stringent over time. They and their hold. So having that opportunity to have exactly what is needed at a moment's notice, because the cost program, the efficiencies, they all sound great, but if you get shut down,
Right.
None of it matters.
then you got to fight
Yeah.
that battle.
Well, and
So
Well,
that's and
it's on.
that's
Oh, sorry,
oh,
Dawn.
oh no, you're good. I was just going to say, one of the things that's important is the tools that you're armed with, right? You don't know what you don't know, and I'll say that all the time. And a lot of times when we're working with our business partners here and we're explaining to them, we show them the tools. Like, a lot of times you'll go into a system and they'll get the state reporting and they'll be like, okay, your settings are done. But then what? What if I don't go back to it? So what we did is we looked at it from a business operations thing. Everybody has a very specific job in what they're doing, but the day-to-day assistant manager or manager for our retail shops and even our growers and stuff, the back office is so important, because when
Yep.
you're talking about the compliance and the regulatory parts of it, how do you know what's been sent? How do you know if it was accepted by the state? So what we did is we went a little step further. We built in reconciliation tools. We built in things so that you could look at everything that you're doing, not just from a banking perspective, but from a state compliance and regulatory side of it. So when you're looking at the different components of what you're looking at in our system, each part has has an area that allows you to reconcile. You're reconciling your day-to-day transactions. Was there an error? Was there an issue? Did something not send? Why didn't it send? How do I resolve this? And every different industry, every different state in our industry is a little different. And and the rules are more complex. And as we're moving through from the West to the East into the Midwest, those rules are getting much and much more stringent, much and much more compliant.
Absolutely.
Look at our southern states, they're just morely in the medical side, but they won't even discuss adult until they have the regulations in place that will allow them to do the two things that we've been saying since the beginning of time. No product, no money should end up on the street. Because what that does is just glorifies us back into our war on drug days where we were, people were standing on corners and selling the product. We want to make this because this isn't any different than t-shirt making. It's just cannabis, right? So,
Fair.
and we know as not only just consumers, but also as business people, that if we can marry the compliance and regulation to the day-to-day tasking, we know that when a regulator comes in or a compliance officer comes into whatever state, they can track back the chain of process or the chain of custody with those package IDs in any way. In our system, you can scan the product and it'll tell you where it started and where it ended. So it's just simple. We make it super simple. Common sense.
Well, let's
Yep,
not
that's great.
forget, you think it's tough now. It's so funny. I'm not laughing at you, but y'all think it's tough now. Wait till the FDA comes on board, friends.
Yes.
And wait till you start getting your facility ready for GMP and EU
Yep.
GMP so you can export.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
Oh
sometimes
my,
I kinda
I'm
feel like
learning so much. I love this adventure, but try having the food inspectors come in and then the medical board. And I think
Yes.
it's going to get a lot harder. And
She's got a good point.
if you, Greg and I feel that it's already here. So we
Yes.
operate as if it's that now,
Yes.
our machines are now GMP compliant because we have a lot of customers offshore. We know the FDA is coming in. It's not if, it's when. So we look at it as if, is it easy to clean? Can you get a GMP approved at your facility easily? We help with the SOPs to make sure that you cover all of the checkpoints and setting up your processes and consistency to get you through that certification process. It's a arduous, long job. I heard it's like about $20,000 to $25,000 just to get someone to help you out, to get
It
GMP.
is.
So,
I've gone through the process, and I can tell you it's costly and it's very difficult in the cannabis space because a lot of people are not necessarily, like, especially the ancillary providers, are not always necessarily making the steps and making the changes, say, internally to kind of prepare for that long-term, possibly shorter term change that might be
yes.
coming
But
quicker than
it's
we
coming,
think.
in my opinion. To me, that's one of the biggest tech advancements you're going to see. For example, one of the
Absolutely.
trim companies we love is Green Bros, and they've got a EU GMP and GMP machine. Colin is a great CEO. He's always thinking ahead.
Yep.
And they've got a trim machine we love. We've been using it for years. So now we've got the drying and curing that can be consistent, qualified. And then now, of course, you've got to trim it. So having a trimmer that we can partner with that, it's just part of making it easier for a facility to get there when it's time. But you better start budgeting because there's just unfortunately nothing inexpensive about it. But I feel companies that do make that investment in all facets of their tech, I think the rewards will be great, especially as the global markets open up when we can start exporting.
Yes.
I think export is the way of the future, especially since we're working in Canada a lot now, and they're allowed to export, and it's
Yes.
awesome. And by the tonnage too, so I mean, it's like, how can you have a glut of cannabis when you're allowed to export by the tonnage? So I think it'll be the most exciting time ever for us. What I'm calling will be the shakeout survivors, from the beginning of this
Yes.
industry. And those of us that do, we're going to supply the tools and the tech. We won't be the snake oil people. We've proven ourselves because a lot of us are marking 10, 12 years in business.
Yep.
That means you're legit, right?
Mhm.
I'm
Oh yeah,
legit.
you
You're
don't have to
legit,
survive.
Dawne. you know, and Jess, we're all legit. So I think those people will be deeply rewarded for their commitment and continued development to the industry. And I just love doing it as a team, whether you're a woman or not. I just love the people passionate for the plant, and just, you know, making sure that as a global community, we can do better and make it safe for everyone consuming it at the end.
Yep,
Absolutely.
exactly. And
Uh,
and that's from the technology standpoint, being able to see where, who, what has been able to, you know, who did the product, who grew the product,
mhm.
who changed the components of the flour, where did it get broken down from? That chain of custody, when we talk about that from the compliance and regulatory side of it, is very important. And I tell people, when you're starting in this industry, that is the one thing you cannot skip on. You cannot skip or piecemeal on compliance, regulation, and SOPs. You have to do your due diligence, put the money into those. You will save yourself a lot of fines, a lot of penalties,
Oh,
and a
yes.
lot of issues. Yeah.
Not a place to cut corners, because
Oh,
you cut
no.
that corner now
No.
and it's going to bite you in the ass later.
You'll pay
So
one
just
way
to
or
move
another.
on, if it's good with you guys, just to move past compliance, we can hit on some other items on the tech
Yep.
side. Tanika, you want to
Yes.
take it from here?
You know what? If I break up, you go right in on me. But ladies, so let's discuss really, because you've hit on it already, the collaboration between tech and cannabis experts, because you really just hit that intersection right now. And I think the collaborative piece is incredibly important, because you know everyone has their spot or their place in the industry, as you've mentioned. So you know, I'd love, Tracee, if you're comfortable maybe diving in on that collaboration piece, because you come from the science aspect, but tech is so important to everything that your company does. If you'd maybe kind of kick us off on that, and if I need to expand.
Sorry, say that again. Well, sorry about that. What, rephrase
That's
the
okay.
question? Yeah.
So basically, the collaboration of tech and cannabis experts, and you're really in the forefront of some of that area. You kind of sit in the middle.
Yeah.
So that, if you could talk about
Absolutely.
that.
Gotcha. Well, I love, you know, I actually love it because we brought in a vapor physicist, you know, so, and
What?
he's,
Does that even
we have,
exist?
they do. We have a vapor physicist on board. He's incredible. His name's Gene Ligman, and he is a nuclear physicist. I mean, he's amazingly smart, right? It's important to have, if you're going to be in this space, have the best people you can around you. Doesn't mean you have to bring them in full time. As much as I love Gene and would love to have him in the office, I don't need him every day. So have those people that'll make you better. You know, you don't have to know it all. Bring in the people that can take what you're doing to that next level. I love that collaboration. I love seeing you know, I live out in a farm area, so I'm seeing $1 million agricultural pieces of equipment literally rolling down my backyard. And I get excited because that's technology in agriculture that I know is going to make its way to the hemp fields, drying lines out there, or better ways to get it loaded into the truck faster, you know, and anything like that really excites me a lot. So I see other industries and their everyday tech coming into our industry, really helping improve, I hate to be redundant, but those efficiencies, you know, and make that cost per gram really keep coming low. The more people get in from other industries, I think they're going to bring a lot to the table of what they used in the food industry, the ag industry, whatever industry. Actually, everything plays into our industry from other industries, in my opinion. So as those get proven, the bad actors get weeded out from what they try to bring in. It's not intentional. I say bad actors. People do a lot of times have good intentions for what they try to bring into the industry, but they didn't do their homework before they did it. So, you know, it just leaves a lot of people salty of what's coming in. But as it
that's
gets more,
comparative to being an entrepreneur, like both. You know, 98% of all restaurants fail.
To add to Tracee's point, I think it's that you touch on such a big point that I would love to add to, which is that I think it is tremendously important. You know, I think there's parts of the industry that are, because of course, a lot of people, as you said, have been burned through good and bad actors, right? Good and bad intentions, whatever. that I think sometimes the industry is a little more hesitant to kind of opening its arms to outsiders. But I think when it comes to this topic, right, of leveraging, tech experts and kind of marrying that with the cannabis world, it's that's what's going to be really instrumental in our industry's growth as a whole. Because we can't do everything ourselves as much as I know we'd all love to, especially, those that have been in this industry for many years. But we're only going to continue to get to the next level if we go in with open hearts and open minds and we explore. We're going to make mistakes along the way, working with others that, again, maybe haven't done their homework or whatever. But the only way, it's kind of like dating, like you've got to go through that process to find the one. It's the same process here. If we don't, as an industry, continuously tap in experts from other places and find these really nice like parallels, we'll remain stagnant. And I think that's the one nice thing is that as much as we are as an industry very hesitant to outsiders, I think certain people like yourself, Tracee, that have tapped into these experts from other, again, like even like, agriculture, that have tapped in those experts, that leads the industry forward by leaps and bounds as opposed to like incremental changes.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if it's a tech expert in software or if it's a tech, or someone who has a great depth of experience on like the scientific side. At the end of the day, our industry, we are our own ecosystem, but we have to understand that there are a lot of other industries that existed prior to us that had to do the same thing.
That's
And there are
right.
a lot of applications and equipment and right smart folks out there that we could be leveraging to grow our industry that much more rapidly, and in various like smart ways. Like even kind of like I was touching on yesterday with your machinery, Tracee. It's I cannot speak, and this is just from a complete outsider standpoint. I cannot speak enough to how dramatic the change is that you've been able to bring to the industry with your piece of equipment. That one thing changes the game. I can tell you from my years working with STM, where we were, working in post-harvest equipment as well. I was working with companies that were, MSOs back when they were just starting out and just starting to venture into other states. And then 5 minutes later, I'd be on the phone with a previous corn farmer from Nebraska who was veering into hemp. And I can tell you, just from the sheer amount of calls that I had from these farmers who were struggling not to maintain their acres and acres of hemp, not struggling to maintain other aspects of their business, but struggling to maintain this one massive outlier that they just couldn't get past. And you guessed it, guys, that outlier was drying their damn flower.
I
They were
know.
building barns. They were losing acres of their flower because they couldn't figure out the drying process quickly enough.
Right.
Again,
What's
companies
the
like
moniker for all businesses? Time is money. But in
right,
cannabis,
Money.
too much time equals mold.
That's right. There it
And
is.
that's the
So,
only thing that's really that you just have to, and that is a loss of product. Time equaling money is one thing, but the loss of product costs so much more because now not only are you losing the time for the money, now you're losing the product that you could resell to recoup that cost. So when you get into that and when you get into all of those things that you're doing, you're saving time, you're saving money, you're getting things into a bigger process, when you can cut down a drying time from several days to many hours. That in itself that's something that to me has already jumped light years ahead of where anybody in this industry
actually.
would expect themselves
Yeah.
to be.
thank you.
Right, because
Yeah,
we're
all
not even
because
just
I wanted
talking.
to smoke it right off the plant.
Yes.
Well, I mean, think about it. You're going to get it at its best point right then,
Right?
right?
I
I mean,
know.
So yeah, and that's the piece I think that like really I think hits the hardest, that we're not just talking about, just the fact of okay, we're reducing the potential of like, losing a lot of flour from not having the capacity to dry it quickly enough. There's also a lot of other factors again that played into that one change of having this type of equipment be introduced to the space. There's the drying and curing aspect of just, again, timing, like we all just touched on. There's the fact that there is, I think anyone that's ever grown or is familiar with the process knows that that time between harvest and drying and curing is extremely, important in the loss of, terpenes and sesquiterpenes and everything else that people spent months, cultivating and carefully crafting. There's the potential, again, for mold and just whole loss of flower from, again, the lack of time and preparation. So we're not, again, we're talking about the fact of bringing in experts from outside of the industry, and having that open-mindedness allows us to have not just incremental change, but exponential change.
Yes.
That
The improvement. Like, for example, Gene, before we brought Gene in, our process was about like 24 hours to dry, 18 to 24. We brought Gene, and I said to Gene, we got to get the time lower, and we all worked together, and we got it down to 11 to 14. And I said, well, that's impressive. Thank you, Gene. Yes, I like that. I said, here's this year's task. Give me 3 to 4 hours. And he's like, I don't know here. Now you're just pushing science, but
Listen,
we're
all
all
great
having
innovations
those
happen.
experts to just help you be better. Just be better. Think of things you didn't think of or didn't know. And it really helps a lot.
Fresh perspective, right?
Yes.
When you look at this, it's just like anything else. When you look at the same damn problem 1,001 times, you hit a stalemate, right? You hit a spot of just nothing is proceeding from here. Now, bringing in someone else with a fresh pair of eyes, it's the same reason when in marketing, right? You have a second pair of eyes, review everything before you put it out. It's the same thing across the board. Having a new, fresh pair of eyes, even someone from within the industry, maybe in a different part of the industry, right? Having these collaborations, even if it's not someone you bring on board full time, like Tracee said, maybe it's someone that comes in from a strategic standpoint, listening to your customers, listening to, those that actually have the problems. You find there's always a great deal of opportunity to leverage that fresh pair of eyes. So yeah, I certainly am one that's definitely encouraging, collaboration above all else.
Absolutely.
So as we move towards the wrapping up the session today, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but as everything progresses and as the industry regulated continues to mature, because I always want to use that word in there, I'd love for you each to explore what other solutions you think are coming or that maybe you'd like to see, and hit on even your clients and some of the challenges that they face in working with each of you in your own respective technological areas, but also just overall, and that consultative approach that you guys take to helping them with their tech.
Yeah, I'll address something that we did recently this year. In the cannabis space, I think the biggest problem that we've seen is everybody stepping over $1 to pick up a nickel. And our biggest challenge this year is how do we help our customers and even our non-customers? I don't care who you're with as far as my competitors. If your business is suffering, how do we help you do better business? So what we did was actually a non-technology thing. So technology sometimes isn't the answer. Sometimes it's the bare basics. And that was bringing in a fractional CFO or a fractional operational officer who basically, we have been known her for many years. She's someone who's worked in the receivership side of things. And so what we did was we had lots of conversations. And one of the conversations I said to her is, I said, how do we stop people getting to the receivership? And if anybody doesn't know what a receivership is, it's when you don't pay your taxes. It's when you don't pay your bills on time, you get reported to the state. And this is a non-compliance thing. Not a lot of people talk about it. It's the dirty side of the industry. And on the receivership side, if you go too long without doing that, paying your taxes, someone can come in pay those taxes for you, and they eventually own your business. So everything you've
Oh,
done, yeah. So if you didn't know
yeah.
that, yeah. So
Not know
I
that.
thought, how do we stop getting to that point? Because
Mhm.
we know that the industry is currently, everybody's fluttering right now. We're all like, why is this happening? We knew this was going to happen. We've been saying this for 10 years, that there will be a crash in this industry because everybody came in and started saying it's a green rush, which I always said, if anybody says that again, I may vomit a little bit. But it's one of those things. It's just the beginning of an industry. We are at the forefront of something, of an industry that is now learning its way through. So with me having being able to work in a lot of working in exports, working in biotech, working in regular, Sally Joe's, bistro or boutique, being able to see everything from the hierarchy from a top one business to just a mom and pop shop, everybody's struggle is very similar, right? There is a similarity to it. But the biggest thing is how to take the knowledge that you have that you don't know you have and make better business decisions. So the technology provides the business analytics and the business intelligence to it, but you do need a human being to come in and say, this is what's happening and this is what you're doing wrong. So what we did was a non-technological thing this year, and we said, we're bringing in a fractional operations officer and we're going to put them into your business. And doesn't matter if you're using our system or anybody else's system, we're going to help you make better business decisions. Where are you losing money, time, money? Where are compliance and regulatory? And we basically broke it down into 3 factors, right? It's the hypercritical, the critical, and the non-critical. Anything that's hypercritical will always be based on that compliance and regulatory stuff. The
Sure.
critical will always be your internal operations, SOPs, things, financials, things like that. And then the non-critical are going to be like staffing issues where you're running into potentially implementing and retraining people. Who can you keep? Who needs to go?
Right.
Having those operational conversations and saying, this is what's happening that's going wrong. We map it for you and we can help you implement it, or we can help you, or we give you the map that allows you to implement it yourself. And either way, it's giving you the information that you may not know. And I did it for myself internally this year. I said, I want you to come in and I want you to do the same thing that we would be doing for our customers. Do it for me. And we replicated it. And so sometimes technology, and as a technology person, I'm going to say sometimes technology isn't the answer. And you have to
Sure.
understand that, because you have to be able to look at the whole picture. And technology, the right technology, will allow you to see the whole picture. But understanding it will usually take that human eye, that consciousness, right?
Dawn, can I ask, tying into what you're referring to now? So yeah, I completely agree. There has to be some sort of human element
Mhm.
that we've got to use, because again, that there's a reason that AI isn't to the point yet where it can,
It doesn't ask the right questions.
essentially overtake us.
Yeah.
But what are pulling back to Denika's question, what are some of the what's some of the tech that you think that our industry could still use? Just like a brief, maybe like 90 seconds or so. What do you think is some of the tech that you'd like to see out there, or some gaps that you think still exist, or some things that you thought, you know what, this would be a really nice problem. I'm sorry, really nice solution to a big industry problem. Is there anything in particular that comes
Um,
to mind?
getting your product out to the marketplace. Right now there's only one solution for that, and it's not a fully, wholly good solution. It works, but it's kind of a devil you know situation. I would love to see a tie-in between the social aspect and the physical business aspect. We're limited in the marketing range of things. So a technology that will allow us to tie those things together. I've talked to David about that for the last several years. If we could tie a social aspect to a business aspect and marry them together, where there isn't the proliferation of a political aspect of it, where we can kind of come in and say, it doesn't matter, let's hone in on over 21, let's hone in on those people, and let's kind of be able to talk to them educate them online, educate them through a social platform that would allow that to maneuver easily and effectively. That is something that I see would help our industry, not hurt it, if you would. But right now we're limited by what we can do on Facebook and TikTok and all these other things. Instagram, threading. Anytime you mention the word
Need to add.
cannabis,
I just want to add to that for a moment and just say, that's one of the reasons I'm blessed to be working with the cannabis media outlet, because as much as everyone as much as everyone, is talking about the fact that like, there are all these other methods of getting in front of not just consumers, but also in front of others in the industry. There aren't a lot of media outlets, are there? We're
Mm-mm.
still struggling with censorship as an industry,
Yes.
both internally, right? Internal B2B communications as
Yes.
well as B2C. There's, media outlets like us, like we have to exist because without others, in the industry supporting us, especially, like through advertising, everything else, that's what keeps us alive. That's what allows us to create these platforms and ecosystems where there is no censorship. There is no sort of barrier between, brands and the consumers or ancillary companies and operators. Like this is a very, it's a very, uh, it's I don't want to say necessarily evil because it's necessarily evil too, but it's an absolute
It's a
necessity.
necessary service.
It's a
Hey,
necessary service.
communication is 9/10 of the law in anything. If you cannot communicate effectively or efficiently, how are you going to be able to get out your message? And this is from even a branding, but a business. This is general business 101. If I can't get my product to somebody, I cannot survive. But we've
Mhm.
got people both on the consumer side, but on the business side who want to know. They want to have that conversation, but we are being kind of stymied, if you will,
Yes.
in that because of censorship on the current platforms we have. I will say one thing, and I'm going to put this little bug in your ear. Taboo. Just remember that word, taboo. You're going to see something coming up on that, and that's all I'm going to say on it.
Okay. Hang on. Tracee, how about yourself? Just a quick, anything in particular that you've seen, that's been problematic that could be solved by technology?
I going to so many facilities that I see a lot, and I see a lot of areas really being addressed in awesome ways. Everyone interprets their needs at each facility very differently. I've never been to one place where everybody does it the same, which has
Right.
got to make it really hard for you, Dawne, when you try to work with these companies, because there is no standardized SOP for pretty much any of it.
No.
Um, but I do see a lot of areas always being improved, and I don't really see anything lacking. And if there is, again, a lot of people from other industries have recognized the voids in our growing industry. So a lot of those slots are being filled, but doesn't mean it's not, available to come in and do something great. But, the longer you wait to make your mark, the harder it's going to be, because a lot of us got in early.
Hmm.
And, a lot of things are already being done or patented or researched and developed by universities already. So, it's never too late to get in now.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I have an interesting take on this. I think there's a lot of technology that is still to be developed that we're going to see over the years from, especially from like the equipment standpoint and, processing and post-harvest processing, you name it. But I actually think one area that we could continue to sort of grow and expand, and this is just, my professional opinion, as Deneka would appreciate. It's that I think there's actually a benefit to us finding better ways to leverage technology to communicate with one another. I
Hmm.
find even like, we've been talking a lot about collaboration, right? Especially between women, between brands and different
Mhm.
companies. I think a lot of us will go to MJ BizCon this year and we'll all be meeting and shaking hands and having one-off meetings and having our reps and folks at our booth, talking with the potential customers, etc. I think there's a lot of services and different like softwares that allow things from a sales standpoint to excel past the show, right? In terms of like, your sales reps engaging with potential leads. But one thing that I often see, and again, perhaps this is just in my experiences, a lot of people will come up with really phenomenal like biz dev. They'll have a lot of like biz dev conversations,
Hmm.
and there's just so much noise and so many things go
Yeah.
on that's like the one platform that everyone tends to connect on is like LinkedIn. And I
Hmm.
think by the time these shows tend to be over, it's kind of hard for people to kind of wade through a lot of the connections, things that they made. So I'd like to see some cool, tech and even just platforms as a whole in the future that can help better connect different brands and sort of like enable a stronger means of collaboration between, different companies and not just different companies, but also the folks behind the scenes, like the scientists and the folks in R&D and thing within different companies, because again, I think collaboration is going to be really what continues to drive our industry, forward greatly. So
Yeah, I love that all you ladies have said these things, and I've heard more than one time today the human element. And I think that no matter how good the technology is, the human connection is what is desperately needed. I remember my first MJ, and I was there, and I was overwhelmed by the fact that there were not many business cards anymore. So I couldn't figure out how to take notes, how to remember someone, how to know. They'd send me their contact card, and then I'm like, I don't even remember who you are because I don't have your picture.
Yeah, for your card. Yeah.
Yeah, and it could have been the after party kind of situation too, but that but
we don't know what you're talking about, Deneka.
yes,
we don't have that experience.
but the human connection is so very important. And when I think about systems like LinkedIn, and as a marketing communicator, I find that to be a very cumbersome platform to have an intimate connectivity element.
Yeah.
So it's funny, it's the one thing I really just don't use that often for that very reason. And I think more of these style conversations need to occur. I know the word webinar is such a nasty word from COVID, but I kind of miss them in some ways, because I went through a lot of learning and a lot of online networking. I'm sitting right now in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Jessica's in Jersey, California, and
I'm in Ohio today.
oh, you're in Ohio today. Okay.
But I live in Michigan too. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So we'll have to hook up, Deneka, for sure.
I would love it. That would be
My
great.
My son just moved to Columbus, Ohio with his wife.
Oh, nice.
We're
That's a
all
great town.
intertwined.
Yeah, it's beautiful there. I actually really
It
fell in love
is.
with it. The Victorian downtown area. I was like, that's where I want to live. I want to
I
have an
love
old
that
witch
look.
house.
There's plenty of those style there. It's beautiful.
Of all my states, though, I will tell you, and Dawn, you'll appreciate this, Michigan is my favorite cannabis state for so many reasons.
Oh,
Oh.
absolutely. Right? Well, I feel
Cost
so
being
blessed.
one.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one. But
They're definitely conscious of the cost per gram in Michigan right
Oh
now.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
I
You
will
know,
tell you, of all of the states that I have worked with the state compliance, Michigan has been the most interactive with the state regulatory commission.
Mhm.
that's awesome.
Years ago, one of the things they did, I wish I could remember who it was. I think it was a couple of women and a couple of guys that got together and said, we're tired of the BS that we're experiencing between the third party systems and metric, and then the state not taking, they weren't kind of owning up to stuff. Everybody was pointing figures, I would call it, it's the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. They're just like, nope, not me. It's this way. And they got together and they created a compliance and regulatory community where they would
Nice.
get together and they would talk to other licensees. What are the problems you're having? And then they would present it to the state and metric once a month. And I believe they still do this. I don't remember the name of the organization that does that, but they changed the way that cannabis consumers got their information
That's
and the
awesome.
way cannabis businesses worked through compliance and regulation so that they could hold them accountable. Because here's the thing, compliance and regulation will hold you accountable for your license, but there's no other way to go back. They said that's not
both
fair.
ways.
Exactly.
That is so awesome. I had no idea.
Michigan was very much ahead of the curve on that. And yeah, I will tell you, I was so I wish other states would do the same thing. I wish and I think the states try to, but then you get in again, political stuff starts kind of pushing in on it. They kept it, this group, this advisory board, if you will, came in and said, this is what our goal is. This is what our plan, and we're not deviating from it. We're going to listen to the users. We're going to listen to the consumers. We're going to come up with a plan and we're going to present it to the state, and then the state and the metric have X amount of time to incorporate it. So I just thought
that all ties in. So I just want to add that is exactly what ties into we've been talking about
collaboration.
Collaborative.
Well, that was an evolution, though. That was a huge evolution. I mean, Greg and I tried to pursue license, or we're thinking about pursuing licensing. Actually, we're in process of it at the very first start.
Yeah.
And it was tough. I mean, they were doing forensic accounting. I mean, if you had an expense over $100 for like the last 7 years, you had to justify it. But yet they didn't have one accountant on the board who was
Yeah.
looking at your app, you know, and it was hard. And luckily, people like that group came in, and other people that, you know, fought for the caregivers, because that almost went away.
Yes.
And people that came in and fought for the businesses. I think there's a happy balance there, you know, but Michigan's like now the home of the $50 ounce or the $40 ounce. And that's really hard for smaller farms to stay alive.
Yeah.
So I'm really watching, you know, certain markets where that's happening. I think it's going to be a reflect, you know,
It's an evolution.
It's not imagine if, it's going to be when,
That's
and
it.
you should be watching those states. Again, it's turning what we feel is a craft product that should be a premium price if it's done right. Other people don't see it that way. They see it as a commodity. And it's a commodity. And if you have a great commodity, so if you have a cheap commodity that's great, that's what CryoCure, that's what our method tries to do. We want everyone to have the least expensive cannabis at a wholesale and retail level, but it is the best. So cheap doesn't have to mean bad, and that's what we're all used to. We go to farms, they're like, I don't need CryoCure because I don't care what our flower turns out like. I don't care that it smells like grandma's basement when you crack it open, because we sell it all. We sell it all. It all goes.
But it's like, I never understand that, because I feel like where's your sense of pride?
Why have it if you don't want the quality?
Because y'all buy it. Everybody buys it. There's nobody that stood up and said,
but to be fair,
because there's no choices. It all looks like rabbit poop in your hand. It smells nasty. It's hard. It's brown. That's not fair to the consumer just because you're trying to rush it out.
Consumer education is going to be instrumental in that.
Yes.
Everyone's still buying off of THC percentages we alluded to yesterday. I think there's really two things that are going to change that. Number one is the like regulatory landscape and how each state, you know, is allowing folks to do business, because that's of course what plays into, you know, supply and demand, everything else. And two, again, consumer education. I'll say it again. The more consumers have access to a greater, not only information, but also greater access to a wider array of products, they're going to get smarter. They're going to get more particular. We've seen that in certain markets that have continued to mature. We've seen consumers start to be more selective. But I think there's also other states that cause challenges in that, and that's why these farms feel empowered to maybe make those kinds of business decisions. Like I know, for instance, in like New Jersey, which I know this is in a lot of different states, but in New Jersey in particular, we can't smell our flower prior to purchasing. And if any of you are familiar with Max Simon, and you know, the Ganjapreneur team, one of the things they talk about often is don't buy based on THC percentage. Don't even necessarily buy based on you know, terpenes, or you know, if it's indica sativa. One of the most important things that people should buy on is based on freshness, like manufacture date and everything like that, you know,
expiration dates are huge.
Yeah, expiration dates. And especially if you can't buy based on smell, but if you can, and you can buy based on your nose, that's going to be one of the most, you know, one of the strongest ways to buy, you know, really good product. But to your point, Tracee, that's why some farms may also feel empowered to make some of those, not
decisions.
Yeah, but how long will the public tolerate that?
They won't.
Can I answer? I'm going to give you one thing, because we have to educate our bud tenders. We're not putting, as retail businesses, we are not educating the bud tenders or our sales associates or sales consultants to know what they are selling. So there's a time and a place, but in order for education to happen to the consumers, it has to start with the brands and the business. If we're educating them on a $5, you know, pre-roll is the best thing to eat, because it's all the shake and trim from the last 60 days that they put together, then that's what they're going to buy because that's what they think is available. So education doesn't have to just be for the consumer, but it has to start within our community. And it's really important that we put that time and effort into that. So this is where I tell people, and this is just me as a personal opinionated person, if you want to educate those consumers, it has to start at the cultivation. The cultivation has to they have to educate the manufacturer and how the product should be broken down properly, or educating and going into the retail locations and training the stores. Build a budget to train the shops that are buying from you so samples can be given and you can educate, tell them the difference between a luminol and a limon. You don't know that one's going to make you a little bit more even keeled and one could give you a little bit of a higher frequency, but not make you so tired. So knowing the difference between a limon and a limonol is going to be very important, because we're not now just talking about, we're not talking just about an indica sativa, which is what the consumers hear, indica sativa hybrid. You don't know how many times I hear that. I'm like, it's not about that. It's about the terpenes. It's about the components that are in there.
But Dawne, you know what the challenge is in this? And
money.
Again, many challenges. One of the things that I struggle with, even as from the consumer standpoint, is I think I've been blessed to meet plenty of bud tenders that are they're not focusing just on educating consumers on the product, but on cannabis as a whole, so they can make those better, more informed decisions on their own. But I think from a business standpoint, a lot of companies and retailers, especially in this very competitive landscape, they're focused on just getting things off the shelf.
Yep.
So I sometimes and I feel like this is probably not the most popular opinion, and I might get some flack for this, but when I go into dispensary, depending on the dispensary it is, especially if it's somewhere new, I'm pretty hesitant to ask the bud tender directly which specific products I should go for, because I'll find that, I've had enough bud tenders try to sell me on products that I know are just, it's kind of like, first in,
first out, FIFO.
First out.
FIFO.
First in, first out.
Yeah,
FIFO.
my culinary days, same thing, first in, first out. And it's kind of like, well, this isn't the best product. It's just a product that you need to get off the shelf. And so I think maybe consumers don't all, have that same standpoint, but I know enough consumers that also struggle listening and having that feedback. So we just have to get to a point where there's a healthy balance.
And maybe not have a million products on your shelves.
Yeah, there's got to be variety. There's got to be variety.
There's got to be variety, but when you walk in a room and you've got an entire wall and it's all prepackaged, eights, and it's this guy and this, from a consumer perspective, it's overwhelming. And then when you do go to the bud tender and the bud tender's like, well, try that one because that's what I like, well, that's great, but why do you like it? But again, if it's a money thing, don't stock with so many options. Do the ones that are do the good products, because here's the thing, the consumers who want the good, great products, it's good, better, best, right? The ones who want the best products will come into your shop. Is it going to be harder for you to operate? Most likely. So there's a balance, and finding that balance. Do you want the recurring, or do you want so many one-offs that are coming in and out and you don't care about the recurring? To me, I think the recurring revenue for a shop should always be its mainstay, keeping the customer coming back. It takes less money to get somebody to come back than it does to get someone to come in the street the first time.
Leveraging like an ERP system and a point of sale system.
Thank you. Yes.
Retailers which items they should keep a broader amount of or a larger amount of stock and restock in, and other products that might not have as much of a quick sale rate that they get lower inventory of, because the reason that these bud tenders often have to push some of these products is because, again, retailers are not sometimes leveraging the data and the resources they have to better understand their own inventory needs. And that's we end up with bud tenders who are having to listen to their bosses of, hey, we just need to get this product
done. And just to clarify, I'm not saying that there's it's all the bud tenders' fault, but if they don't know what if they don't know what they're selling, this is why you have days. It's my son plays professional, like semi-professional soccer. He plays for college, right? So and so for him, they have a media day. Why can't we build something like that where the brands come in and say, let's try the product, here's some samples, samples. Let me explain to you why this one is different. There is,
They've started to.
they're
It depends
starting
on the
to.
We
state.
are. I see that a lot,
It
actually. You
depends
can
on the
really
state, but
see
there are. And in fact,
but it
I
costs
actually,
money. And
Well,
when the brands are struggling,
yeah.
how is it to give the stuff away for free? Because then you struggle even more. But
Accurate.
and so it is a double-edged sword, and I totally see it. But like I look at it, that's where the business intelligence kind of comes in. Like I know with my program with PROTEUS, you can go into it, and before you purchase it, if you've already purchased it recently and there's still product sitting on the shelf where it hasn't moved in 30 days, it'll say, are you sure you want to sell this product? It hasn't moved in 30 days. Are you sure you want to buy more of this? So it will stop the process from a purchasing agent from purchasing more product that hasn't moved off the shelf in 30 days. So again, having some of the, we call it analytical intelligence, not, artificial, because it's taking true business information in our system and it's giving you a pop that says, hey, maybe you don't want to do this. But again, it's ultimately the decision maker. But these are things, knowledge is power,
Also, one other really cool thing sorry to interrupt, about
Oh, no,
stale product or product aging on the shelf. That's a huge problem.
Oh, yeah.
I've traveled and gotten cannabis that's a year old.
Mm-hmm.
A year old. And so I don't know how they allow that, but it was. But one of the great things about our process is you can keep your harvest in the freezer as long as you want. Okay. So with being in the freezer as long as you want, now you can cryo cure it and get it. And that's already been tested. Once it's in your freezer, it's been tested. So when you get your orders in, you produce exactly what you need.
Right.
There
On
is no
demand.
aging product, right?
Exactly.
But again,
What a huge
leveraging
cost
technology to solve these industry problems.
That's right.
I'm actually going to have us wrap up with this subject here. But yeah, I know that, listen, that's been a really common and powerful theme through both of our part one and part two sessions here together.
Yep.
Right? Collaboration, community, technology, and the human element. I think a lot of these subjects have intertwined. And again, we can see even just by Tracee mentioning a second ago that again, having this technology inadvertently solves problems that we might not even, that are so indirect, that we wouldn't really perceive that to be an immediate solution. But again, having something like that has a ripple effect. So I think, as an industry, one of our biggest things to continue to move forward with is let's focus on innovation and welcoming competition, bringing in others from other parts of the industry, supporting each other as women, both from executive to executive, as well as mentoring others that are, again, working behind the scenes at some of these companies, focusing on education, and more than anything else, like I said before, centering around that community, building that community. So
yes, definitely.
thank you all for your time. It's been fantastic to hear, your experiences and the different ways that we can leverage tech to continue to grow as an industry as a whole. So it's been awesome. I think we can probably talk for another 4 hours about a million other subjects. So we'll have to maybe do a part 3 down the line.
I'm always available. Thank you for such a great platform, by the way, to share our messages, and it's consistent and it's credible. And we just love being part of your family. Thank you guys, really.
And the same here. I love the open, honest dialogue and the fact that we can, look, there's good, there's bad, there's ugly in every industry. And, but focusing on the ways that we can always help each other, that's something that we're able to do here. So the growing aspect is huge. No pun intended.
Pun intended.
Everyone keep a big eye out as we're going to be releasing our Women in Cannabis issue here in the coming weeks. It is our commemorative keepsake issue of not just women who have been mentioned and spotlighted before, but also some really awesome women that have been behind the scenes plugging away on the science side, on the tech side, on the compliance side, consulting, you name it. We really wanted to create like a time-honored issue where we are highlighting some awesome, as we said before, badass women really helping to drive this industry forward. So please be sure to grab a copy of the magazine on newsstands, on our website, cannatechtoday.com. Again, thank you both. Thank you all three of you for your time. We're thrilled to have have heard all of your feedback, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.